Welcome to Redde-Zone Radio podcast. I'm Rik Saylor, and today's interview is with Todd Hudson from the Wildflower Coffee and Cafe. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor book, Exit Smart, where 10 industry leaders share their key insights on how companies are built to sell best and at the highest value. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we were looking at your history, and I love the video you did, and we're just going to ask some questions that basically are going to help us understand your whole passion and your mission, because that's really what it is. I mean, that's how it comes across to me. But I think what everybody seems to want to know when they ask us is, you know, what inspired you to start your company on Wildflower?
So I grew up with basically a farming family on one side, on my dad's side. My grandma was from Ireland and grandpa was from Kentucky, and they both farmed in those two areas before they met. On my mom's side, they were sort of in the restaurant business. So my great-grandmother, Tilly, owned a restaurant here in town, and my grandfather was the chef there, and then he ended up going to, served in Korea and did culinary training in Korea. So in hindsight, you know, I never really thought about this till after I opened the restaurant, but after I opened the restaurant, I was like, I should have seen this coming a long time ago, that I've got this farming background and the culinary background. And I started working in kitchens when I was 14, 15 years old. And what threw me off after I realized I love this and this is what I want to do, what I found to be incredibly odd was like the incredibly low quality of food that we were buying at all these restaurants. These were high-end restaurants. And you know, I saw tomatoes that were hard as a rock and white, and you know, pork that didn't have any color to it. And I saw these weird things, and chicken breasts that looked like the size of turkey breasts. And I had never seen that. And I was used to growing up, going out in the garden and picking fresh tomatoes and picking eggs and those kind of things. So I thought that was really contrary to what the public perception was when they go into a restaurant. And so I decided, you know, that I wanted to open my own restaurant prior to that. And then after, you know, realizing all of those things.
And how old were you at the point where you were observing all these things?
Well, I mean, by the time when I was a freshman in high school, I wrote a paper that said I wanted to marry Jenna Hensley, drive a Volkswagen Beetle, and own an organic restaurant. And so
I love that.
I bought a Beetle at 15 and a half. I married Jenna 14 years ago. We've been together for, I think, 26 years now, since 7th grade.
Congratulations.
And then I started the restaurant. So I don't know. It was one of those things, I think, that, you know, I've been blessed to have the ability since I was young to recognize, to basically to listen to my heart and to know where I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to act and those kind of. I've always kind of had a pretty good radar on those kind of things.
So what did you do before you owned the Wildflower Cafe? Because I saw in your video where that you actually acquired this building, I think when you were 23, and then you with friends and with a small amount of capital, didn't have a lot of backing behind you, went in and remodeled that stuff yourself with your friends and family. So obviously you acquired those skills from somewhere.
Well, you know, in my home with either side of my family, but my dad was really the kind of guy that he didn't hire anybody to do anything if he didn't have to. So, we grew up, you know, as small children using hammers and nails and building things. And, you know, my dad was pretty big into getting us into those kind of, you know, learning how to take care of your own things and working on your own cars and those kind of things. So by the time I got the restaurant, I tried to move to Florida when I was 21 to open a restaurant with the chef that I'd worked for previously. And he ended up getting cancer around that exact same time. and where I was at in Florida, a hurricane came through a week and a half after I was there. So I ended up back in town, and I ran a restaurant in Glendale, a kind of a pub, really nice place, English style pub. And then that was my first opportunity of I had complete free reign to do whatever I wanted to do, and I had an agreement with the guy that owned it that he was in debt at the time. The business was in debt, and essentially he said, if you can pay off that debt, I'll sell you the business at a steal. And so that was all the motivation I needed, and I just basically worked 100 plus 120 hours a week until we got that figured out, and we did. And he ended up selling it to some other guys, and they fired me that day, and then that ended up being really a blessing. And that's when I went down and I finished up my business plan that I've been working on for probably 5 or 6 years, and got a little bit of capital and found that building, and 1%, maybe 0.01% chance that any of that would occur again. It was really a
great time,
an anomaly.
And I don't believe in coincidences. I don't think you do either.
No.
But I feel your passion, and we know that key people, we call it human capital in my world, is one of the key components to any successful company. So, I heard that very heartfelt video when you're with Alex, who'd been with you for 19 years, and how he would go down, with the ship with you. Who are your other 2 top employees, if you can pick 2, and how did you choose them? I've kind of changed how over the last 15 years of running the restaurant, how we handle the employees and the hiring process. And I will tell you this, that this is something I learned over COVID, was that I think I'm a relatively talented chef, and I've got plenty of awards. And what I realized was during COVID, and I got down to just me and Alan, and I realized that I have very little value when it comes to my professional career. If I was Emeril Lagasse at the time, it would not have mattered, because Emeril Lagasse only has 2 hands and can only move so fast. And what I realized, more so than I had ever really thought about in that moment, was that my value is a member of a team, and that even with one additional person, which is what I was at, where I had lost 19 employees from the beginning of COVID till a year and a half later or so, and even with one more employee, when it was me and Alan, that wasn't enough either. That there's one guy cooking food and one guy running it to you, and we still, the restaurant was not going to be financially viable with that model, and so as we hired, I now have 5, and so that's exactly where I need to be based on the capacity of the restaurant and the volume that we're capable of doing and financial viability. I don't have a 6th, and I thought about this question, and it would be hard for me to prioritize one person, myself included, to prioritize one person over another, because none of us really have any value without the others. That it's a team of 5, and without 5 people working at one time in unison with each other, it's like playing basketball with a team of 4 instead of 5. There is no chance that you're ever going to win when you're outnumbered and you can't perform. And so each member really has, I would say, equivalent value, from the dishwasher to my sous chef to me, that I would put my dishwasher on the same level as me, that we have to have each other. She needs me and I need her, and vice versa. And I know you and I have had conversations off the record, just because we go to a common meeting on Wednesday, and of course I've experienced your great cuisine, and you always get thumbs up out there. But that having been said, it's so important, isn't it, about the chemistry and the culture. And it's interesting how you went from 19, where you may have said at that time, I need 19 people, and now, post-calamity crisis, and the pandemic, which just absolutely hit the service industry so hard and still hasn't recovered. and here you are with 5 people, and still, would you redefine how you define success?
Absolutely.
How do you define success now?
There was a. Let me back that up. I thought my dad was an incredibly intelligent person, and by that, I think one of his top skills was managing himself and prioritizing his time, and being a good time manager in the sense of he worked exactly how much he wanted to work, and he was there when he needed to be there, and he produced exactly the amount of income that was necessary for him to be happy and to be successful. And
your dad was a chiropractor, right?
Yeah.
And was he was local here?
Yeah,
in Butler County.
We could walk to his office from here.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't realize that as a child, and I'm sure he, as with anybody, he wanted to work more. But I'll tell you one quick story that is really defines to me success and being smart.
Yes.
and that. I've got a friend that's a chiropractor nowadays, and the guy is incredibly successful, and he's an incredible chiropractor. He's a great guy. He's got a number of doctors working for him. I would imagine at some point he's going to have multiple offices, and that guy works. He works really hard as well. And I was talking with him one day, and I said, my dad's as good as you, and I think he's better at business than you. And he had a very fair response, and he said, then why doesn't he have as many doctors working for me, or why isn't he seeing as many patients as me, and those kind of things. And that's a very valid point of if that's how we measure success, then this other fellow was more successful than my dad. And I said, you know what, I'm going to ask him that next time I see him. And so my dad came in, and we had lunch like a week later, and I said, Dad, this is what my friend and I were discussing. And I said, you are smarter than him, and you're better at business than him. You're more connected in the community. You're more involved. Why don't you have multiple offices and multiple doctors working for you? And his response was, that was the plan. And then I had you boys.
Wow.
So for me. That's being smarter than it's having control of your life and being able to have that ability to say, this is my boundaries, that I work until this time, or
when you define that, I know in our world we think of it in terms of work-life balance, and I heard you describe that very same value in your very heartfelt video, and I would encourage you all to go on and look that up. And we'll give you a chance to give you that website and where that's connected to. But I also realize when I think about this, having owned multiple businesses myself and through my entire life as you have, and being exposed to all that, we know one of our greatest strengths is to know our weaknesses, right? We all have strengths, we have God-given talents. But if I were to ask you, what are your weaknesses as a business owner, and how do you overcome those? Because it feels like we all have these gaps we have to fill.
I think over time, understanding that a job is in essence, yes, you want to do it for fun and you want to enjoy your job, but at the same time, the bottom line is you're there to produce an income, and that doesn't mean chasing the almighty dollar and doing everything possible. But there's some level of balance that should be found on, when you need to reprimand an employee, or, even looking outside at yourself and telling yourself, what can I do to be better? And having those kind of conversations with your staff or in your own head. And I've realized, I probably have been overly generous at times. And possibly, not, I know for sure, not charging enough at times. That there are certain things where, I'm friends with these people, and they come in and spend money, and I'll say, you know what, I'm just going to take care of the bill. Yeah. And they don't, there's no need for me to do that. I've done that a lot, and that, I did look back during COVID and when money was really tight for us during that period, and I thought, all the people that, this is tens of thousands of dollars that I've either donated or comped off of people's meals or bought them bottles of wine or whatever. Where are they now? And I did have that thought, and that's my fault that, business is relationship driven, and that should be beneficial for both parties, from the client to the business itself. But and that sort of is tied to with I'm not really good at saying no to anything, and I've learned that, and I try and work on that. But that's kind of who I am. Is that anything that you say. Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me?
Or you found that the empowerment of when you say no, it actually empowers your yeses.
Well,
and it gives more opportunity to yeses, because we only have a finite amount of time, of resources, and of talent, and if we're using those resources wisely. But I love these correction periods, and obviously in our world, it's a time for vetting out of. It's just a natural process, and I think it actually helps us to figure out where we need to be and what we need to be doing. But one of the final thoughts here, the last question I'd like to ask you, is if you have thought forward about what you'll do when you no longer run the Wildflower Cafe. Can you even envision that?
I mean, during COVID, I certainly envisioned it.
I saw, we had a lot of conversations on how that, was transforming and mutating, by the minute. Every week I saw you at our weekly meeting, you had a different story and form, and I knew you were figuring it out.
Yeah. The restaurant business is kind of odd that, I knew back when I started my business that owning the property in the restaurant business is really a clutch move, that you really need to do that.
Absolutely.
Renting is not, I'm sitting here 15 years later, and even when we went into COVID in early 2020, we were in a phenomenal financial position because of, proper financial management, making good investments, like buying the building and being smart with our money. And we didn't know that was coming. And then all of a sudden I was sitting there and I realized it was kind of empowering to say to myself, I don't have to do this. I don't have to come in. I don't have to open my doors today. I can lock the doors of that building and get rid of the food and not touch it. And I can come back in 10 years if I want and unlock it and get back on it. And that was really kind of an empowering feeling for me. Granted, I would have no income and I would have to find something else to do, but I wouldn't lose my business and I wouldn't lose my building. I wouldn't lose my equity and my assets, and that we had a time frame that was okay, that if we had to wait another year for things to turn around, that's okay. So I don't know. I guess did that answer it?
I think it did, because I know one of the things that, a company that is run well day to day is also a company that's prepared to exit by whatever means. And, these elements we call 5 Ds in my world, it's divorce, God forbid, it's disability, it's death, it's disaster, it's some kind of disruption. You've been through the disruption part, and these just run in cycles. We know they're going to happen, we just don't know when. But being prepared for them is so critical, and I think it ultimately speaks to the fact someday somebody could show up and say, hey, I want to buy your place, just like you tried to do with the guy in Glendale. Now you got stiffed on that deal, but you look at this succession. I've done that in my own company, and it's so liberating because now I get to do this. I got a new passion, and I didn't think I could have a passion as strong as my one for wealth management and financial planning, but it's still problem solving. And so, looking at, where that came from, and I'm hearing that in your story and just your preparation, and I love our friendship, and I love what you've done.
Ditto.
And I love that place. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Can you share your website? I know you've got videos on there. You've got a website for Wildflower Cafe.
So our website is wildflowermason.com, and when you get to there, you can not only make reservations, hours, you can read some articles that have been written about us. There's also our YouTube link where we've got some wildflower stories that we share. And then I've also got another podcast that we do that's got some YouTube videos. There's some cooking demos, and that's on the bottom as well, and that's called The Lost Local. And we are located at 207 East Main in Old Downtown Mason, right near Kings Island.
Thanks for sharing that. We'd love to hear your company's story on Redde-Zone Radio, so if you'd like to be on our show, reach out. And you can visit our website at reddezone.com, shoot us an email, or call us at our phone number. And if you benefited from today's interview, be sure and give us a thumbs up and share it with your colleagues and friends. And if you'd like to obtain your free copy of ExoSmart, where 10 industry leaders share their built-to-sell insights that you can use right away, go to the website, click on the book, complete your information, we'll get it right out to you. Let us know if you'd like an autographed copy, because we'll do that for you too. You can also receive a free subscription to our e-newsletter, Redde-Zone Insights. Comes out every week just by requesting it. Well, that's this week's interview. See you soon.